Hi everyone, my name is Chiamaka Ugachukwu, also known as Chichi, and I am a second year Ph.D. student in the Department of Pharmacology at the University of Michigan. And so, as a PhD student, like many others across the country, across the world, one of the things that I do is ask a meaningful question that hasn't been answered yet, that could potentially benefit society. And particularly, I'm doing that under the umbrella of pharmacology. So, what is pharmacology exactly? One simple definition is really studying the way that drugs affect the body. So that could be anything ranging from what happens when you take a drug, where does it go, what effect does it have, why does eating a certain food affect the way a drug works, how do we treat disease, understanding mechanisms of disease. So basically, pharmacology is the study of drugs, their effects on the body, and also how our body affects those drugs. And so within this discipline, we're trying to really characterize in detail exactly what happens from the moment a drug enters your body. Where does it go? Why does it go there? How does it go there? How do we make it go where we want it to go? How do we make it have the intended effect or desire? So for example, how do we create something that can alleviate a headache that you might have? Or how do we create a treatment for heart disease or something of that nature? And so one of the questions that I'm asking falls into a subset of pharmacology, which is called translational pharmacology. So what does that mean? Translational pharmacology is also referred to as benchside to bedside. What does that mean? Well, it's really the process of how do we take discoveries from the actual lab bench. Scientists like me and others all around the world are working hard to answer these questions. How do we take our discoveries that we, come up with in the lab and put that by your bedside table? How did Tylenol end up in your medicine cabinet, or cough medicine, or any of the number of medications that you take? So for me, I chose to kind of specialize in this field of translational pharmacology because I've always been fascinated with science, with chemistry, particularly within the human body. And so as an undergrad, I majored in biological chemistry and basically studying science within living organisms. And I wanted to use that innate passion, the fascination I had with the field, to have a positive impact on society. And one of the best ways that I could think of to do that was to use my training to try to come up with cures for diseases that affect hundreds of thousands or millions of people worldwide. And so as a PhD student, I work in David K. Jones' lab, and we study ways to treat heart disease. And so for those who don't know, heart disease is actually the leading cause of death in the United States. And it includes a number of diseases that you all have probably heard of. It can include stroke or heart attack, and another type of disease called arrhythmia. So if you haven't heard of arrhythmia is basically when your heart beats irregularly. So it's out of sync. So if you put your hand on your chest and breathe slowly, but normally, you may be able to feel your heart beating, right? It has this inherent normal rhythm that keeps us breathing, keeps us moving, keeps us alive. And when that rhythm is disrupted, when it beats out of sync, kind of all over the place, that can ultimately cause your heart to malfunction, to stop working properly, and spiral out of control to the point that your heart actually dies. So if your heart dies, then you die too, obviously, right? And so one of the questions that I'm asking as a PhD student in the Jones Lab is, are there ways that we can design therapies that can restore a heart that's kind of beating out of sync to its normal heart rhythm? So how do we do that? Well, that is a great question, and that is currently what I'm working on. So what actually, makes your heart beat? What keeps that normal, healthy heart rhythm? That's a loaded question, and there are a lot of players involved. But we are focusing on one of the many pieces of the puzzle that are responsible for keeping a healthy heartbeat. We're focusing on one piece of that puzzle that plays a major role in making sure that your heart beats correctly. And what we focus on is something called a channel, to put it simply. And you can think of a channel as an opening, or more specifically a pore, but you can kind of just think of it as an opening through which things can flow in or out, depending on what's going on. And the channel that we're focusing on is called HERG. It stands for the human ether-agogo-related gene protein. And you don't need to know what that means or where that name was derived from, but that is the channel that I study in our lab. And we want to see, are there ways for us to design tools that can manipulate or alter how this HERG channel behaves, this opening that's a part of maintaining your heartbeat? Can we manipulate what flows in and out in such a way that when your heart's beating out of sync, when we use these tools, can we restore a healthy heartbeat? Or maybe lessen the impact of this non-normal, abnormal heartbeat? And so to me, this is one of the coolest projects that I could possibly work on. I get to use a model that mimics a beating heart. So I work with heart cells in the lab. They're these cells and they beat. We don't take them from living tissue or living animals. They're derived from what we call stem cells, which are basically cells that can be turned into any type of cell that you want. So we add some stuff to these cells, they turn into heart cells, they start beating, and then I can do experiments on these heart cells to monitor for arrhythmia, this irregular heartbeat, design these tools and see, hey, do they protect the heart? Do they hurt the heart? What are the effects? And so that's what I do as a PhD student in pharmacology. But there are a bunch of other fields and a bunch of other things that you can do. But this is kind of, my passion. And so the main takeaway from this talk is that your heart is this amazing life force that keeps you breathing and moving. And it has a rhythm. It moves on its own. And when that rhythm is disrupted, I want to know, how can we fix it? And can the tools and the ideas that we come up with restore the rhythm of your heart?